We're continuing our Walks with Jesus series. We're on to walk number 7. And this is the walk alongside the hurting. And as we start this sermon, I want to make a statement and ask a question. And the statement is Jesus' presence is all that we need, for it brings hope and restoration. And the question is, where are you hurting and with who are you walking? Where are you hurting and with who are you walking? And I just want to get straight into our reading, which is from Mark chapter 5, verses 21 all the way through to 43. Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jarus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. "My little daughter is dying," he said. "Please come and lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live." Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she had not gotten better. In fact, she'd gotten worse. She'd heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, "If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed." Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" His disciples said to him, Look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, "Who touched me?" But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." And while he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jarus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, "Your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now." But Jesus overheard them and said to Jarus, "Don't be afraid, just have faith." Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, "Why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead, she's only asleep." The crowd laughed at him, but he made them all leave. And he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone what had happened. And then he told them to give her something to eat. May God add his blessing and understanding to the reading of his word this morning. Amen. There's a lot in that passage. And I'm already about 15 minutes behind schedule. So we're not going to go through it line by line, okay? Don't worry. You will still have food today. It just might be your evening meal. That's okay. And the reality is, I will preach this sermon and you will think, well, why didn't he talk about that? There's always more that I can draw out of it. So just bear with me. I'm here and you're not, okay? So we'll go through it. I simply want to look at the statement, Jesus' presence is all that we need, for it brings hope and restoration. And the question, where are you hurting and with who are you walking? As we walk with Jesus in the events of this day. And what a day it must have been. I wonder if when he woke up that morning, Jesus thought this is how the day was going to unfold. If we read the preceding verses from the start of chapter 5, we will read that Jesus has been around the country of the I can never say this word, Gerasenes, on the eastern side of the lake that is known as the Sea of Galilee. There Jesus has healed a demon-possessed man, and then he's got back into the boat, and he's gone to the other side of the lake, probably around Capernaum, and it's been a busy day and a draining time already for Jesus. But Jesus doesn't call it a day, for Jesus is always willing to walk alongside the hurting. And I want to unpack this question throughout this sermon. Where are you hurting and with who are you walking? By looking at 3 outcomes that happen when we actually walk with Jesus. For if you don't already figure out the best answer to who are you walking with, the answer is Jesus. There is no other answer. But the reality is when we're hurting, we don't always walk with Jesus in the first place in our hurt, do we? We will walk with someone, even if that's ourselves, but unless we walk with Jesus in the place of our hurt, we'll always stay in the place of our hurt. And you will notice in the Bible reading from Mark, Jarus and the woman walked with Jesus in the place of their hurts, and because of that, they didn't stay there. Can I say that this is not the same as if we walk with Jesus, we won't experience pain? Because that would be a lie. But Jesus invites us to walk with him with our pain as he leads us through it. So the first outcome is the presence of Jesus changes everything. Presence. Someone's presence can be good for your souls, can't it? You know what I mean? If you're going to an event or a gathering or a party or whatever, and so-and-so's going to be there, you're excited even before you walk through the door because you know they're going to be life-giving. My dad was a little bit like that. My dad was known as the life and soul of the party. We were at my uncle's 80th, that's how we rolled in our family, and my uncle's 80th birthday party just outside Northampton yesterday evening. And obviously my dad wasn't there because he died many years ago. I just thought to myself, if Dad were here, it'd be a little bit less dull than it is. Sorry, Uncle Brian, if you're watching, just being honest. You know, there was no music, there was no DJ, there was no dancing. It was in a bowls club. That's the demographic, you know. No, I'm only teasing. We had a lovely time with the family that I haven't seen for a number of years. It was great. But I just know if my dad, even though my dad would have been in his 90s by now, if he had been there, they would have been dancing. That's all I'm going to say. I'll leave it there. He was the life and soul of the party, whether that was at a party, whether that was in work. He was always the joker. He could take a joke. He would give a joke. He had half his ear removed. He was known in the factory as 18 months because he had a year and a half. That's what he was known as. That's the kind of person that he was. And his presence just made you feel, it's great. Last weekend we were away because, thank you, Jesus, both of our children are at an age where they can go to the same youth event weekend away. If you're not there, guys, you'll get there. It's good. And we met some friends that we haven't seen for a couple of years. And it was good for my soul. It really was. We just laughed. We just spoke. It was just wonderful. Jem said to me, you look like you were loving it. Jem wanted to leave maybe at a certain time, and it was like, no, we're not going yet. You know, and so we just stayed. It wasn't an extravagant evening. There was no posh nibbles and amazing. This wasn't a come dine with me experience where people pull out the dancing and, you know, you do belly dancing halfway through the evening and all of that. It was nothing like that. It was just sat on a sofa, having a chat and having a laugh. And we came away and I said, my soul, my heart feels full. Not because of anything these friends said, but just because of their presence. And I suspect you have those friends too. Just just being in their presence is good for you. They're probably the same people who are there for you when you have moments of emergency, when the phone rings, when the diagnosis comes, the relationship breaks, the job disappears, the child wanders. And in those moments in life, it is good to have those people that we can go to, and their presence can be helpful. And we all need those people. And God gives us those people. But here's the thing. Anything the presence of those people offer us is limited. Because they're human. And we're human. Yet, if in those moments we choose to walk through them with Jesus, his presence can change things because Jesus is not limited. Are you with me? Jarus had other people walking with him. But in the emergency of his daughter's illness, he knew there was another more powerful that he needed to walk with. And Jarus finds Jesus and says, "Come quickly, Jesus, I need you now." It's probable he didn't even have his wife with him. His wife was back home with their daughter. So he didn't even take the closest of closest people with him. He needed to walk with Jesus because he needed to be in Jesus' presence. You know, a number of years ago, 7 or so years ago, I had a blood test and I got called into hospital because I was really not very well. And in that moment, it was good to know that there were the medics doing everything that they needed to do. And I was grateful for their skill and expertise. But in those first few hours and the days, what made the difference for me was the presence of Jesus. Yes, I was walking with my wife and my family, and I was so blessed and grateful to have them with me. I would have struggled without them. Yes, I was walking with people from the church who came to visit me, but walking with Jesus was far and above the other walks. It was everything. I felt him so powerfully, and it wasn't dependent on whether the medics could get me well, although, of course, I wanted to be well. But it was simply the truth that I felt the presence of Jesus with me, and this gave me a peace that was far more comforting than all the treatments I was receiving. I knew prayers were being prayed, and even though I was ill, Jesus' presence changed everything because it was an overwhelming feeling of being held. And in our passage this morning, Mark gives us one of the most emotionally charged walks in the Gospels. It's not just a miracle story, it's a walk with the hurting and desperate in both Jarus and the unnamed woman who touches Jesus' cloak. A walk with the dignified, for as a synagogue leader, Jarus would have been a respected leader. But a walk with the forgotten, for the woman who had been suffering with this illness for 12 years, would have been an outcast, classed as unclean, possibly condemned. She's not even given a name. She's the unnamed woman in the biblical accounts. And so a walk with the hurting, as both Jarus and the woman had deep pain, that for one was emotional and the other was physical, probably, and emotional. The woman had spent all of her money and had gotten worse. Jarus had left his daughter because he needed Jesus. So both Jarus and the woman were hurting, and it was the presence of Jesus that changed everything for them. Jarus falls at Jesus' feet as he comes into Jesus' presence, and the woman pushes herself forward and clutches the presence of Jesus as she grabs his cloak. And so we ask ourselves, friends, where are you hurting and with who are you walking? See, Jarus was hurting because of his daughter's illness, and he knew that only the presence of Jesus was going to help him. The woman was hurting because of her physical illness that had caused a deep emotional pain. And she thought, you know what? If I can just walk in his presence and grab his cloak, then my situation could change. You see, it doesn't matter who we are. Pain doesn't care about status. It's not interested in your achievements or your bank balance. Pain will come to us all. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. And so, friends, it is in your season of trouble, your season of pain, the question is, who do you walk with? Whose presence do you seek? Because Jesus also went on to say, but take heart, for I've overcome the world. You see, walking with Jesus when we are hurting is the only way we can receive true hope and peace, a knowledge that we are not in this hurt alone. Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. And so walking with Jesus in our hurt means we walk with God, and this means even if our outward circumstances don't change, our inward life can, as the presence of Jesus gives not only hope, but it gives peace and strength to endure and persistence in prayer. See, walking with Jesus changes us, for it shows we believe in the power of Jesus. And when we walk with him, we receive all that he has for us. So when we face pain, and I'm fully aware that many of you are facing pain right now, the presence of Jesus is the only presence that has the power to help us overcome, for it's the only power that has overcome the world. So wherever you are right now, may you know that Jesus will walk with you even when the path feels slow, interrupted, or impossible. For both Jarus and the woman, who they chose to walk with determined what happened next. And who we choose to walk with has the power to determine what will happen next. Because the second outcome from walking with Jesus, where we see hope and restoration, is that we realize Jesus is never too busy for you. We see in this passage that for Mark, that Jesus was interrupted twice. It was as Jesus arrived back from the healing of the demon-possessed man, he has a large crowd gathering around him, probably all wanting something from him, wanting to hear his teaching or to see his miracles, that Jarus comes in that moment and falls at his feet and asks him to come and heal his daughter. Notice Jarus doesn't send a servant, but he chooses to go himself. Maybe Jarus thought that Jesus would see his status and say yes, and yet Jesus didn't see his status. He simply saw his heart. And his heart was desperate. Now, Jesus could have said to him, sorry, Jarus, can you not see? I'm a little bit busy. I've got lots of people here all gathered around me who want to hear my teachings. They want to see me do some cool stuff. Can I come in a little while? But no. Jesus, we don't read that. Jesus allows himself to be interrupted, and he chooses to walk with Jarus to his home. And then as he's walking with a sense of urgency from Jarus because his daughter is dying, Jesus allows himself to be interrupted again by this unnamed woman. I think when I read that, I thought of Jarus. Jarus must be, come on, Jesus. Yeah, that's great. Can you come back to her? I got you first. I asked first. You know, like we do with kids when we're talking to somebody and they just interrupt us and we go, excuse me, Daddy's talking. And they just stand there for like 10 minutes. And all they want to say to you is, it's snowing outside. Jarus must have been tapping his feet thinking, Jesus, it's a little bit of an urgency. I'm not inviting you to watch the rugby. Happy St. David's Day. Don't watch the rugby. He says no. But no, Jesus allows himself to be interrupted again by this unnamed woman. Yet this was a different interruption. Jarus pushed himself forward publicly to come before Jesus. Yes, this woman pushed herself forward privately, hidden by the crowd, and didn't want to bother Jesus, but he knew. We read in Luke's version of this walk, Jesus says, someone deliberately touched me. And in your pain, in your hurt, do you deliberately grab hold of Jesus? When we read that Jesus knew that healing power had gone out for him, so he turns around to see who had touched him, I don't think this was like when power goes out from Superman and he just feels drained. I think it was more of a Jesus knew that someone who was in trouble had enough faith to walk with Jesus and touch him, touch his cloak, grab his cloak, and he wanted to meet that person. You see, Jesus is always moved by people who show faith, and that's what that woman does. See, when she hears Jesus asking the question, who touched his cloak? She thinks she's done something wrong. But when she speaks up and says it was her, listen to this, church, she gets so much more than she thought she might get. For Jesus she gets healing. But do you remember what we read in the passage? Jesus calls her daughter. Daughter. This is the only time Jesus uses the word daughter in the whole of the Gospels in a tender, personal address way. Wow. She was so special to him. Can you see it? Jairus is pleading for his daughter. He says to Jesus, my daughter is really ill. Jairus' daughter has a dad that loves her, a dad that intercedes for her, a dad that will fall at the feet of Jesus for her, a dad that doesn't care if he looks like if he shows himself up. Yet this woman has no one pleading on her behalf. And yet when she comes face to face with Jesus, Jesus shows her that now she does. Daughter. Such a powerful word. Such a powerful word of invitation to see herself, not just healed, but to see herself as a daughter of the King. I read that and I thought to myself, she came for healing, but got so much more. She came for healing, which she got, but more than this, she got adopted. She came for healing. Church, are you with me? She came for healing in her hurt, and she got adopted. She became a daughter of the King because she realized that as a daughter of the King, Jesus was never, ever too busy for her. Amen. The truth is, Jesus was willing to be interrupted for Jairus and the woman because Jesus was never too busy to help those who sought out his presence, and he's never too busy for you. And so we can be confident that Jesus hears our individual needs, even though millions cry out to him. The truth is, we can all learn something from this. We're often too busy to be interrupted by others. I'll be honest with you, I get lots of interruptions every day. That's not just from Katie, but I get lots of interruptions. It's not just from Dave in the office. It's not just from some of the trustees. It's not just from the elders. I just get interruptions. And I'd like to stand here and say that, I love those interruptions. Nothing blesses my heart more when I've got a full diary and my back's against the wall and I'm up for time and I get an interrupt. My heart just sings for joy. I'm thinking in my head, how can I answer this question and get them away from me as quick as I possibly can? May God heal you. Thank you. Bye-bye. It's lots of interruptions. And then when they say, should we have a cup of tea is going to take longer, isn't it? Jesus shows me, though, how to turn this on its head, how to flip the script. And instead of seeing the interruption as something that's agging me, to see it as an opportunity. To share faith, to speak faith, to grow a relationship, to meet needs, and so on. We pray in our staff meeting every Monday morning. We often pray something along the lines of, God, may we follow what you have for us this day. And an hour later, I'm tamping because I've got an interruption. What if that interruption is actually what Jesus wants me to follow that day? May we be more like Jesus and never be too busy for those interruptions from people who need us. Because it's through us that they might see Jesus. And the takeaway of this outcome is that we should never fear that Jesus is too busy with the needs of others to pay attention to us. Even when our needs seem insignificant in comparison to the needs of others, the Lord still cares and listens to our cries. We can go before him in prayer, confident that he knows our needs and wants to meet them according to his will. Why? Because the greatest dad of all is never too busy for his kids. I'd like to say I'm the greatest dad. The kids can buy me a mug that says greatest dad on it. But I know I'm not. I remember being in Cosham and we're walking down the high street and we come to the train gates and I'm holding Reuben's hand and the train gates start beeping because a train is coming and the barrier's going to go down. I'd like to say I scoop my child up in my arms and I held him safely and ran to the other side. No, I didn't. I let his hand go and ran. Fortunately, Jen was with him. I just left my son. Because I'm not the greatest dad ever. Don't judge me. Because you're not either. But Jesus, God, we're sons and daughters of the King. Do you know, I think some of us are afraid to come to Jesus because we don't think we're worthy enough. Can I just say, you need to see this differently. Jesus is not only willing to be interrupted by you, friends, he longs to be interrupted by you. His heart's desire every single day is to be interrupted by you. So let's walk with confidence in him of who we are to him. Where are you hurting and with who are you walking? And the third outcome is we walk with Jesus with our hurt because Jesus can do what no one else can. Jarus and the woman experienced something only Jesus could do as they walked with him. Jairus' daughter was healed and the woman was healed, all because they walked with Jesus. But notice, none of this was straightforward. If you think of Jairus, before he and Jesus get to the house, news comes to them to say that Jairus' daughter has died. And Jesus responds in one of the most hopeful comments in Scripture, do not fear, only believe. Notice, friends, he didn't say don't feel. He didn't say don't cry. He doesn't say don't grieve. He says don't fear. Very different. Why? Because fear tells us Jesus is too late. Faith tells us Jesus is right on time. Because if we walk with Jesus, we see him do what no one else can. And so Jesus arrives at Jarus' home after the mourners have already begun. He kicks them out. The situation looks final, but Jesus speaks a different word. The child is not dead, but asleep. Jesus said this not because she wasn't truly dead and it was just a little trick. She was dead. But death was not a barrier for Jesus doing something miraculous. Because the presence of Jesus, death does not have the final word. And so he takes her by the hand, an act of compassion that breaks purity laws because he was touching a dead body. And he says, little girl, arise, get up. And she does. Jairus would not have experienced any of that had he not been walking with Jesus in his pain. He was hurting over the pain of a sick and then the finality of the death of his child. And yet the presence of Jesus, who he was walking with, brought hope and restoration. Because walking with Jesus did what no one else could. The woman had this illness for 12 years, different to Jairus' situation, that was acute and sudden. Her hurt was chronic as she'd been walking with this for a long time. You see, sudden pain, like Jairus, shocks you. And yet chronic pain reshapes you. The woman had been shaped by her pain, and yet as she walked with Jesus, she experienced something no one else had been able to do. And she went from being shaped by chronic pain to being reshaped by Jesus. And maybe for you, there's a sudden crisis that's causing you hurt. Who are you walking with, friends? Maybe for others, you feel like you've been in a 12-year battle. Who are you walking with? For both Jairus and the woman, it looked like Jesus was too late. And yet his timing was perfect. His timing wasn't human, but his timing was perfect. Where are you hurting? And with who are you walking? Friends, it's important because the one you walk with determines whether your story ends in despair or resurrection. And can I say, either in this earthly world or in the heavenly eternity. Who we walk with through life when we are impertinent is important. And when we walk with Jesus, the pain is still real, but the end of the outcome is different. You know, imagine you're walking through a violent storm. And if you walk alone, every thunderclap terrifies you. But if you walk holding the hand of someone stronger, the storm will still be raging, but your confidence changes. Storm doesn't define your safety. The hand you're holding does. And so as I look to draw this sermon to a close, I want to address something. You see, in the account from Mark chapter 5, all ends well. Jairus' daughter rises and is okay. And the woman, even though it's taken years, gets healed. Here's the challenge. Because you and I both know that even when we walk in the presence of Jesus, when we're hurting, it doesn't always go the way we hope it will. You see, there are walks that we choose and walks that choose us. And seasons when we are hurting are always walks that choose us, because none of us would choose pain. But here's the thing. In the Bible, Jarus' account of what happened is descriptive. It's not contractual. In other words, I'm not saying if when we are hurting, we choose to walk with Jesus, then all will end as we hope. That would be untrue. I can testify to that. To walking with Jesus through times in my life when I was hurting and things did not turn out as I'd hoped they would. I had to sit down 20 odd years ago and tell my nan that her daughter had died. When she and all of us had prayed long and hard and hoped that mum would be healed, the wail that came out of my nan's mouth was nothing like I'd ever heard before. And yet, did this mean that Jesus had failed me or hadn't had enough faith? No, I don't believe it did. Because we do not control outcomes with deeper levels of faith, but instead we have enough faith to trust Jesus with the outcomes. You see, having faith and walking in the presence of Jesus is not a golden ticket that enables us to guarantee the miracle we're seeking. But it does guarantee the presence of Jesus in the hurt that we face. Think about Jarus. His daughter did die. Jarus still experienced all that this would mean: the announcement, the grief, the mourners, the pain, hearing the words, your daughter is dead. Walking with Jesus did not prevent death happening, but Jesus walked into it. And in our lives, as we walk with Jesus where we're hurting, that will not prevent tough things happening, but we can be sure that Jesus will walk into those moments with us. That may not humanly change our outcome, but it can change how we walk through it. For walking with Jesus does not always mean we avoid the valley, but it means we're never alone in the valley. It's tough, isn't it? It's really tough. And as we walk through our hurts, no matter what the outcome, whether that's in the diagnosis, in the delay, in your grief, in the unanswered prayer, the question remains, who are you walking with? Because even when the outcome is not what you hoped, walking with Jesus means peace in the suffering, peace in confusion, resurrection beyond the grave. So you can come back up, worship group. So where do you find yourselves in this story today? Are you pleading like Jarus? Are you interceding on behalf of someone you love? Are you reaching for the woman? Are you reaching for Jesus like the woman? Because there's been things that are going on for so many years, and you still can't see an outcome. Are you waiting for Jesus to arrive? Friends, wherever you stand, hear this truth. Jesus walks with the hurting, and his presence brings hope and restoration. Not always change circumstances. A walk with Jesus is not always a happy, smiley walk in the park. Think of Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil because I'm on my own as I walk. No, it doesn't say that, does it? It says, I fear no evil because you are right there beside me. So friends, if you're walking in a valley at the moment, know that you're not alone. Will you walk with the presence and power and hope and comfort and a shoulder to hold you? He invites you to walk with him, not just when all is well with the world. He invites you to walk with him when you're in that darkest valley.